All right, we are actually today exactly on time. So it's 5 o'clock and we will get started. So, good evening, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome. Sipping Thoughts today brings you an expert session on the birds and the bees talk, a parent's guide. Today we have with us Vani Vishwanathan and Ramya Anand of Tarshi. And I know this is a topic that is extremely close to my heart, maybe because I have two very, very young kids and I have two very young girls. Both of them are about 4 years old. But talking to children and young people about gender and sexuality is very, very confusing and worrying for many parents and concerned adults. In this short session by Tarshi, we will explore how parents can prepare themselves to talk about these issues. And if you're like me, I'm going to be taking a lot of notes because this is something that's going to be very, very useful. Because especially when we're stuck in Corona times and COVID times, living in smaller spaces, we need to also make sure that we are talking to our children about these very, very important issues. Before I continue, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi platform media company which was co founded by me, Sukirti Gupta, and by Meeta Gugutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline Real Women, Real Thoughts. We wanted to create a no judgment platform and create a network of women for women. Sipping Thoughts is available on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course our website. Please do check us out and for who you've been waiting for today about our speakers. This session will be facilitated by Vani Vishwanathan, who's a program manager with Tarshi, and Ramya Anand, who's a program coordinator. They're both been with Tarshi for about 5 years. So Tarshi, what does it stand for? Stands for Talking About Reproductive and Sexual Health Issues. It is an NGO that was founded in 1996 and is based out of Delhi. Tarshi believes that all people have the right to sexual well being and to a self affirming and enjoyable sexuality. Towards this, Tarshi supports and enables people's control and agency over their sexual and reproductive health and well being through information dissemination, knowledge and perspective building within a human rights framework. Since 2019, Tarshi has also been working towards creating safe, inclusive, sexuality affirming, or CISA spaces. A CISA space offers an environment that is non judgmental, rights based, and sexuality affirming, where people can feel safe and feel free from the fear to talk about, learn about, and or experience their sexuality and sexual well-being. It is an ideal we wish to work towards where sexuality is no longer surrounded by shame and taboo, where we can all speak about it openly. So, some do's and don'ts, some house rules. Yes, you are all on mute, but we want the session to be very, very interactive. Please keep chatting and sending us your questions, your thoughts. You can also raise your hand using the Zoom feature. We will unmute you because we would like you to ask your question yourself. We will be doing some polls. All the polls are anonymous, so we will not be sharing any name or any data of who has given us the information. And when you do ask your question, please do keep your question related to the topic and to the point. And as always, we say, please forgive us for any technology glitches, because that is something that is often out of our control. And with that, I welcome Ramya and Vani from Tarshi. And today, Ramya will be kicking it off. So, Ramya, a very warm welcome to Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you so much, Sukriti, for this warm welcome and the introduction. Yeah, and thank you everyone here who has joined us here. And it's really encouraging to see so many of you taking interest in this topic today. Yeah, so it's something that is really important. We all do understand about it. But of course, as Sukriti was also saying, it's something that we're not so comfortable sometimes, or sometimes we don't even know where to start. There are always a lot of questions in our mind of how to go about it. So it's completely understandable. And Vani and I'll just give you an overall view of what it is going to be like. We will be giving you a few key points to keep in mind for you, so that it helps you in being able to talk to your children about gender and sexuality. We also hope that this session is able to give you a better understanding of how to approach the subject, and of course make you more confident and prepare yourself much better. Yeah. So we also understand, even though you all know that it's something that is important, that needs to be talked, it's something that we can't even avoid, right? It crops up in the child's life every now and then. So it's something that we just need to learn how to talk also. And it has its own advantages. Like some people might even question, why should I even talk to children about sexuality? But then we know by various research also is that when a child is well informed about their body, they are able to take more informed decisions about their bodies, about their relationships, about their life decisions. And it also helps children to become more confident. Yeah, so there are very many benefits for us to be talking to the children about gender and sexuality. So before we plunge on to some of our key points that we want to give, we would like to ask a question to you all, a poll that you will have in the screen. So what emotion comes to your mind when you think of talking about sexuality with your children? If you can please choose one of it. Yeah. If you feel that you're not able to resonate with these emotions, you could also type separately in the chat box.
Please do vote on the poll. Please do select which one of these feelings is coming to you, so that we can understand better what's on your mind. So I'm seeing that a lot of you, and if you're feeling more comfortable, please do type it in the chat box.
Yeah. It's really nice to see some of you are feeling confident about it. Confusion, yes, many of you have said it to be confusing, which is very, very understandable because sexuality is one topic which we don't discuss very often. Someone also says careful. I'm trying to understand that we need to be careful of what we have to convey to the children. Scared, yes, it's also scary on how do we start. I mean, what should I say? How much should I say? What will my child think if I start talking about these issues? These are very, very valid concerns by parents. Thank you so much, everyone. How much to say, and there is definitely a lot of confusion, right? Correct. So there is always a confusion on how to start. So we will be giving you a few key points probably that would probably help you understand. Someone says starts with body differences. Yes. So right, we do know that there are various concerns for parents, but yet we know that this is something that is important, right? So one of the key points that would be necessary is to broach this subject, since it's a subject which we are not very comfortable. This is not something that we have grown up talking about freely. Yeah, talking about sexuality has always been a hesitation. It has been something which is sometimes seen as a matter of fear or something shameful or something like that. So with children, then how do we talk to the children when this is going to be such a difficult subject sometimes? So broaching the subject with the children on an everyday basis, on their daily routines, is probably a much better, effective way, because what happens there is that we're not sitting or with them and talking these very awkward, embarrassing conversations all of a sudden. What is happening is that we are trying to weave these conversations while we are doing various activities, in which case we are finding opportunities in their daily life. It could be probably while you are giving birth to a young child. Yeah. So while you are giving birth, you could talk about the body parts. You could talk about particularly the correct names for the genitals. Yeah. Children are always curious about their bodies, and they're also curious about others' bodies. This is also a good chance for you to also tell the children on how the bodies of the various other genders also vary. Yeah, so the conversations could start from also a dinner conversation. While you are having dinner, you could ask your child about what they thought about the probably the boys' locker room incident, whether they think this is something that would happen in their school, what are their own fears regarding this issue. So there are many ways of finding opportunities while you are walking, while you are reading a book, watching a movie, cooking. So what happens is that in these many ways, the conversation also becomes normalized. You know, it doesn't be like the child is not made to feel like, you know, what is my parent telling, you know, this is so awkward and I don't want to listen about it. Now if we are able to bring in the daily course of our daily activities, it doesn't look like it's a very big deal, and it makes the child even to normalize these conversations also. So right now I know that we are all in this lockdown period when most of us are spending our time within our walls, sharing spaces with the families like never before, right? This has been one of the rarest cases when all of us are together 24/7. I know it's got its own challenges, but this is also a good time for us to optimize this valuable time that we have with the children, right? So I just want to ask you all if you can chat, write it in the chat for us to let us know what do you think are the various opportunities that you think in this time that you are together that you could use for these conversations. Like in what ways, if you have any ideas of how you're already doing it, probably sleeping time, probably while you are telling a story. Yeah, bedtime stories are reading time, yes. When a child asks a question, yes, you're there to answer. Changing clothes while watching movies. Cartoon watching, right? That's nice to see. So I'm sure some of you are already doing it, right? And some of you can always try and pick these opportunities while drying. So in fact, there was this experience that one of the parent was sharing, is that while the boy was given the task to dry clothes and fold clothes, there were also some intimate garments that were there of the mother. So the boy was asking the mother of why do you wear this if the father is not wearing it. So this is a good chance for the parent to also tell the child about various bodies. Why do women wear a bra or things like that? Yeah, so there are various. So the one of the key points is to find opportunities so that it becomes a part of our daily life in many ways. Of course, there might be some conversations which will have to be done one-on-one basis. Yeah, it can't be, you can't make a child sit and talk about their bodily changes in front of their sibling or their friends. That is going to be very embarrassing for the child. So there will be some conversations which would require a privacy that you will need to do on a one-on-one basis. But the key is to find opportunities as and when you're all together. Yeah. So the other one is to be able to openly talk. You know, there are a few key points that we could keep in mind as to the conversations that we have are as open as possible. They're candid, they're very clear. Yeah, because as it is, we know that sexuality is a subject that is difficult and it gives us a lot of discomfort. So if we are going to mumble in our own words while we are talking about it, or we are going to show our own uneasiness or discomfort while we are talking about it, the child is going to pick it. The child is probably going to think that this is something that even my parent probably is not comfortable, right? So in any way, we have to see at what place are we coming from. So also there have many times when the child does ask an awkward question, right? It must have happened in all our lives. Like all of a sudden, the child comes up with a question that you probably wouldn't know how to answer at that point. Or you might also feel that this is not the right age for me to tell about this to the child, right? It could be various. So what do you do in these times? is that you could always tell the child that, okay, you will get back to the child as and when the child is grown up. Right now I am giving you this information, and if I don't know, if supposing the parent doesn't know about the information, it is good that I'm going to check on it, I'm going to read about it, I'm going to answer your question, right? So what is happening is that we are coming back, we're saying that we're going to come back to you, either after being well informed, or if you feel that it's been inappropriate, that you wouldn't want to say about it, then you could say that maybe if you grew up, I'm going to tell more about it. But for now, this is what it is. So what is happening is you are establishing a kind of trust. The child also feels like, okay, my parent is going to get back to me, and you're keeping the channels open for the child also to come back to us whenever that they need to, right? So and sometimes it's also a good idea to talk about our own lives. Like, we have also had a lot of sexuality related, we've had our own crushes in our times, which we could always share with the child and say, you know what, I also had this person who I fondly used to like, and this is what I used to do. So what happens in these kind of easygoing conversation is also the child gets a certain validation to say that, okay, then which means it's not like such a bad thing that I'm doing. It's perfectly okay for me also to have crush, or talk about romance and things like that. So we are validating the child's own feelings and experiences in a way. But one thing that I also want to bring to attention is that many times, parents go back to their childhood and probably keep saying that, this is what we did, and so that is how you should also do. We were such, we used to be like this, and so you also have to follow these kind of values. Look, we were like this. So what happens is that is probably not going to help the child in many ways, because the times that we all live is very different. Yeah. So that will not, even the child will not find any relevance in those kind of advices. So while we do, of course, talk about our experiences, we also need to keep in mind whether we are giving any solutions out of those experiences which are not relevant to these times anymore. So and then we will also then talk about, I know now that I've also told about the communications being candid, clear, open. There also comes then, while the child is talking to us, how are we responding to it? Are we being judgmental to what they are saying? So that is something that we have to be very mindful about, because we do understand that many times we might not agree with what the child says. I mean, their viewpoints or the way that they look sexuality might be completely different from our belief system. So what do we do in those times? It is best that we do not, as soon as they say an idea or a viewpoint, we need to be mindful of not becoming angry, not shutting that communication, saying what you are thinking or doing is something wrong. Now what happens is the child, we are shutting the conversation, we are shutting the channels of communication there. I know it is difficult sometimes when the child brings up with some very difficult thing which we are not able to accept at all. The best is to breathe and pause, and then just let it be, and then try and listen to what they are trying to say. I'm not saying we can't present our viewpoint. And while we are presenting our viewpoint, we are saying that I do not agree. You have to, we have to learn to agree, disagree respectfully also, right? We are saying that, but then I believe in this value system. And then also please explain to the child of why you feel this certain belief that you hold is important for you. So the child then understands which place are you coming from, right? All of us have different varied life's experiences, and the generation, of course, is really having a huge gap between the parent and the child. So for us to also be able to explain to them, this is why I feel a certain way, and that is why I feel what you think is something that might not be appropriate. So where we are having an open conversation rather than shutting the child down for what the child just shared. Because if we are going to shut the channels, the child probably is not going to get back to us for any further, sharing. So being non-judgmental and not getting angry or shutting them down while they are presenting their viewpoints, and disagreeing respectfully, and telling our own viewpoints in a manner that with the, giving a valid explanation. These are also very key while we are having a conversation, right? So I kind of try to tell you how are we to talk to a child in these issues. Of course, the other matter also remains to be, what do I talk, right? That's another question that comes. Okay, now that I know how should I talk, what are the things that I should keep in mind, what should I say now? So when it comes to what are the issues that I should be talking to the child about, of course, they are varied for each age group, each stage, they keep changing. Yeah, for each time we do address various kinds of issues. But we want to ask you a question before we get on to it. Yeah, so the question is, if the question can be posted here for them to answer. So what issue or issues in gender and sexuality do you feel very uncomfortable talking about? So you can choose more than one here. So the options that are available: bodily changes, child sexual abuse, sexual acts, self-exploration and self-pleasure, body image, romance and relationships, gender roles and stereotypes, consent, gender and sexual identities. Of course, if you have any other issue that doesn't come in this, you could please write us in the chat. Okay.
Please do vote so that we can get the collective opinion. Otherwise, please do put your comments in the chat box. We're finding a lot of people very shy to vote.
These are topics that you are saying is very, and this is the anonymous word, as Sukriti was mentioning. No, we won't get to know. Okay, transgender people, they all would come in gender and sexual identities, right? Relationship troubles, how to educate about good, bad touch. This would come in either child sexual abuse.
There was also how to talk about puberty.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm going to end the poll, but I think people are feeling more comfortable actually in terms of writing on the chat box than actually taking the poll.
So no, from the poll, what we see is that sexual acts seems to be the most uncomfortable. And then self-exploration and self-pleasure. Yeah, there is a participant who has rightly mentioned that good touch, bad touch. This is something we don't use. Like there was this query about good touch. I mean, there was a participant who had written about good touch, bad touch. So rightly said that we generally use as safe and unsafe touch. Because there is a certain value for saying a safe and unsafe touch, because it's not value laid, it's not like value based, whereas a good and bad has a certain value connotation while we are talking about it. So as far as we see, I think we would probably say that most of you might find it difficult to talk about sexual acts, yes, or self-exploration, yes, also gender and sexual identities. Thank you so much for sharing, all of you. So knowing that these are some of the issues that are difficult to talk, one is for us to also understand, where does this discomfort come from for us? Yeah, why are we finding it uncomfortable to talk about these issues? There could be various reasons. One is probably we ourselves do not know much about these issues, and we don't know then how to broach these subjects. The other also could be our own internalized bias that we all have. You know, all of us have a certain bias based on the kind of upbringing, based on the kind of books you read, people you interact, your childhood, your adult relationships. It could be because of many reasons. So the internal bias also might make some of the conversations very difficult. Like, not all parents would be comfortable talking about sex to their child, right? It is not going to be so easy. That is also because we might have associated the very aspect of sex with a certain shame or fear, or this is like something that I've never even uttered. I mean, these are sometimes even within partners, talking about pleasure or desire is something that we don't regularly see. So considering that, talking to a child becomes even more difficult. Yeah, so one way is to also understand what is it that is causing us the discomfort, and try and work on our own internal bias. Like, what is holding us to talk about it. If it is information that we don't know about, it is good that we could reach out and read more about it. But if it is something based on our own attitudes or values, we will need to continuously work on it. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but we also know that while talking to our children, accurate information is something which is very important, right? So if we are going to give children information based on our own bias, which is non-judge, which is judgmental, which has a prejudice, which is not accurate, that probably is not going to help the child. Let the child decide. Let the child decide for themselves. Of let them weigh, with the child weigh on what they think about it. But while we are giving an information, for us to keep in mind is to it being accurate and not coming from a place of our own bias. So we need to, of course, it's not going to be very easy, as I am saying you, but we need to be first of all aware of what are our biases and why are we doing it, why are we thinking in a certain way, and then work on it while we are talking to our children. Yeah, so another thing, of course, to prepare ourselves better. Talking again, as I said, talking about sexuality is never easy, especially if we have to talk about penis or vagina to our children. You know, these are words that we don't use in our everyday life, right? So we might need to also rehearse ourselves. We might need to stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm not saying like all of us would, you know, for each of us, there could be a different kind of discomfort. So whatever that discomfort is, we might have to rehearse, get help from friends or somebody so that we are able to become more confident while we are talking about it. So preparing ourselves and rehearsing also is something that we need to work. And then, of course, informing ourselves better, reading as much of information as it is relevant, updating ourselves, because the current times are obviously changing. There are newer issues. So another thing that I want to ask you all here is, what do you think are currently your concerns regarding your child in terms of sexuality? What are the issues that currently bother you in terms of your children? If you can, please type it in the chat. Cyber safety, yes. Teaching to speak up, okay. Speak up if there has been an injustice or something, I'm assuming, right? Others, please. Child abuse, consent, right information from the right source, online sharing. Ensuring that they see sexuality and discussion around it positively. Very, very valid point. Right. So Vani will be addressing some of these issues where somebody is talking about varying viewpoints, respect for LGBT community, acceptance, confusion regarding how much to be told, correct. So knowing about their sexual orientation and understanding and supporting. That's really nice to also say by the parent, say that you are ready to support after once you know about it, which is very encouraging for us to see. Create an open relationship. So right, so there are very many issues. I mean, right from body image issues that children have these days, the dating, the kind of dating that they have, the kind of relationships that they have with their friends. It's about cyber safety, as somebody had also mentioned. So for us to be updated, also mental health issues. There are a lot of issues that children are facing, a lot of stress at various points. So to understand these issues and read a lot about it, and also update ourselves in these information, in these issues, is something that is also very important. Of course, Vani will take you more into where to get these information from and all that. So I'll take it to Vani now.
Cool. Thanks, Ramya. And thanks to all of you for sharing all these concerns, because now we know that you are, sort of mindful of what is going through the minds of your children, your understanding of the kind of environment they're growing up in. So I have another question for you. Can we bring up the third poll, please? Now that you've brought up all these topics, how many of you have had conversations with your child or children about gender and sexuality? So yes, openly, somewhat, kind of done something, not really sure, and no, nothing at all. So we will wait to hear from you. I'm very happy to see that there's a lot of openly and somewhat done. And somebody said in the chat box, openly, cool. All right. Can we hit all participant numbers for at least one question? Come on.
Yes,
This is
please
easy.
do try to, do take the poll if you can. Otherwise, please do feel free to type in the chat box, whatever you feel comfortable with.
And I just wanted to say, we are also looking through what you're saying in the chat box. So we know there are some questions that have come in. Some of those might get answered as we, speak through the next few minutes. But if not, we'll come back to them towards the end of the session. All right. So one person says, well, I've been open. Children look up and down and beyond. That is very true. Thank you so much for answering. So it's really nice that most of you had said, okay, you've had some kind of conversations, and it's fantastic that like 34% have said you've had open conversations. It's really heartening to see, because, it means then that more and more of us are thinking about these, and we're in a great place to sort of get going. So the first thing then that I would want to say, and this might answer a lot of questions that have come up, is that this talking is not a one-time event. Ramya also mentioned, we can't just sit this one time and be like, okay, now that you are 9 years old, I'm going to sit and talk to you about puberty. They will look up and down and like away and beyond, because I mean, 9 is still okay. I think if, we have heard of instances where parents start the conversation much later. Now, of course, they mean really well. But what happens is, if the children haven't heard you all along talking about these topics, they are going to be like, you are not the person I want to get this information from. Because by then we have talked about, you've all mentioned the number of sources from which children get messages on sexuality, movies, books, and this and that. So friends are a very big source. Internet is like really already, a big one. It's younger and younger, children are accessing internet these days. Children as young as 5 and 6 are doing Zoom classes. It's just really there. So there are so many sources of getting information on sexuality now. So it's really much better if, as parents, we start as early as possible. And to also remember that it is an ongoing conversation. A one-time conversation at the age of, say, 9 and 10 about puberty and menstruation is not going to be sufficient when the child is 13 or 14, because newer concerns would have come up by then. So it is a conversation that needs to happen regularly. And to answer someone's question on what age do we start, I will go back to what Ramya said, which is that start from when the child is born. When do you teach the child the names for eyes, nose, and mouth and hands? Teach them the names of genitals. These are the exact organs that are going to be involved in their sexual and reproductive lives much later. It reduces shame, and you know, like saying PP and BB. I mean, I understand it may be difficult in some settings. We'll get to that later, but teaching them the right names for genitals tells them that this is just another part of your body. Second, it gives them the vocabulary to come and tell you about safe and unsafe touch. You know, what is the point of teaching safe and unsafe touch if we don't know where exactly they should be or should not be touched, what is safe and what is unsafe touch? So starting right from the beginning is great. Another great way to have conversations with really young children is around gender. By the age of 2 or 3, children already know pink is only for girls and blue is only for boys, and you know, any mixing up causes a lot of chaos. Can we bring up conversations then as to why? Okay, ask a male child, like, what, why do you think wearing a pink shirt is a problem, or the other way around, you know? So those are conversations that can start from the beginning, and they need to be ongoing. And this also, like Ramya said, normalizes the conversation. It makes it like an everyday thing. You know, sexuality is something that we all derive a lot of fun from. It's not just about boring or scary stuff. So when we make it a regular, ongoing thing, that is the message that we give children as well. And just taking on from that, we should also keep these conversations free from fear, free from guilt, and any kind of shame. Now, I have a small question. Have you as parents, you know, seen young children touch their genitals when they were, say, 3 or 4? Have
Yes.
you, if you could tell us in the chat, that would be great. Okay, so Sukiti said yes, more yes. All right. What do you think of this? Like, what have you thought of this touching that children do? Like, what comes to your mind? You can type, like what is an emotion that comes in? Because it feels good. One person says they initially freaked out. I understand. They're discovering themselves. They're being curious. This is exploring. Yes, it feels good. They're inquisitive. Later calmed myself down. That's great. I was wondering why. It's pleasurable. You know, this is really good because you're all like sort of getting the message that we wanted to share. Yes, these are parts of the body that do feel good when they're being touched. These are parts of the body that, you know, they are exploring, because from a young age, you know, these parts are always covered up. We don't want them to be seen naked and running around. And you know, there's always this whole thing of, like, when I was a kid, it was always like puppy shame. You know, you can't just be seen showing these parts of your body to other people. So children are also curious. That's how, like, what's really down there, you know? So, but all the same, what is the common reaction?
See, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's bad. Mat karo. Don't. So what is the message then that we might be giving the children, right? That this is something to be ashamed about, that these are parts of the body that if they touch, they should be guilty, something of fear. So, you know, it's similar to what I was saying of, you know, it's great that all of us older, but will respond. If we tell them, listen, this is a part of your body that's supposed to be kept private. You know, maybe there are only certain places, you know, in the bathroom, in your own bedroom, when you're in the shower. These are the places that you can be, where you can touch these parts. But when there are other people around, it's not a good idea to do it. It may not be a good idea. So what you're doing here, what we're doing is we're helping the child understand the concept of public and private, which is at a very young age, at the age of 3 or 4, you know. And this is something that will grow as they grow older. What does private, public and private mean when they say 6 or 7 years old? Okay, knock before you enter my room. I'm going to take a bath, so I'm going to keep the bedroom door locked. You can only come in after I'm done dressing up, you know. So that is a message of privacy that is it takes a different form when the child grows older, and so on and so forth. When they are teenagers, we should knock before we enter their room. That is privacy that we owe them as well. So you see how the same message grows and grows as the child is in different ages and different stages. So that's something that we can do. It's a very simple message, but we're eliminating the idea of fear and guilt and shame around parts of the body that will eventually be involved, that will probably be involved in sexual pleasure, that will probably be involved in reproduction as well. So the other thing we want to make sure is that, especially with slightly older children, acknowledge that desire and pleasure is definitely going to be a part of their lives. Like Ramya was talking about earlier, many of us did have crushes when we were young, when we were in school. It could be on like film stars, it could be on people in the school, sometimes it was on teachers. I mean, these are emotions that are very common and that have been common through generations. So it is good to be mindful of our reaction if we get to know that our child brings up a crush or is like talking about attraction to somebody. Alarm bells don't need to go off, because it's not like they have a crush. It doesn't mean they're like kissing and making out, or good lord, having sex. No, we can keep the space open for them. Let's encourage this conversation. Say, oh, hey, me too. When I was in this age, this was, so that way the children also get to see parents as human beings, not like these people that always know everything and that always, never got anything wrong. We are telling them that we are fallible human beings who've been through the same emotions and relationships as the child also goes through. The other thing it will do is to tell the child that parents haven't come from another planet. Okay, it's like, boss, I also know, like that kind of a thing. It just sort of sets the stage that way, right? All right. So Ramya also talked about how we grow up with biases. I mean, it's all over the world. We all take in messages about sexuality from various sources: family, culture, religion, the laws in our country. So it's only natural that we will have biases. What we do need to be sort of considerate about is whether we're passing them on to children. Now, one of the questions that we've had like come up quite often is, I don't understand all these sexual and gender identities these days. It's just too much. I don't get it. How can I talk about it to my child? Now, a lot of times there are things that we will encounter in life that we'll never understand. We won't really know how a rocket made it to the moon. We don't know exactly how, like, the sperm meets the egg, like what is the exact science behind it? Why does someone conceive 1 month and not conceive another month? So like we don't know a lot of these things, but we go through them anyway, right? Like we do engage with them. So I think as parents, another thing that we can try to do is to learn to respect and accept, even if we don't entirely understand something else. And this really matters when it comes to identities, because we might never know why a person is transgender. Why are they saying, okay, I don't use the pronoun she or he, I use the pronoun they? We don't know. It's not entirely our business to always understand, especially if it's someone who's not like in our immediate family or something. We can simply say, okay, that is their choice. I still have to respect them. That is their right. I have no right to disrespect someone just because I don't understand what they are, what they are going through. So as you can tell, there's just like a lot of walking the talk that's involved when it comes to parenting. And I'm sure you agree with me that you do that in so many areas of life. Like, that if there are some values you want to instill in your children, that you have to sort of do the same things, whether it comes to say lying or finishing our food or like going to bed on time. We always say that, yes, the child will learn what the parent does. So similarly for sexuality as well, it's no different. So one of the biggest things that we can bring up in this context is about consent. thanks to movies and, a lot of discussions around, say, the Me Too movement, thankfully, consent has entered our vocabulary. But does consent only feature in sexual lives? I think consent also features in a lot of other day-to-day things that we do. And I'm sure that many parents are, uh, um, taking the consent of their child in various different ways in everyday matters. If there are a few examples you could give, like what are some things that, whatever the age of your child, that you will ask them, that you will take their consent before doing. If you could share some examples in the chat box, please. Looking at their phone, consent for showing physical affection. That's great. Borrowing their belongings, fabulous. Can I give away their old toys, clothes? Yeah. While taking food from someone else's lunchbox, fantastic. Yeah. When someone wants to hug or kiss, yes, ask the child first. This is great because you are already understanding. Yes, parents forcing children to eat even when the child is full is quite common in a lot of cultures. Consent before entering the room, opening the school bag to check notebooks, this is great. We see that you are actively exercising consent in so many areas of your child's life already. So what is the message that this instills? That the yes and the no that they say have value. I hope that if they say no, you don't do that, and not like, sneakily do it later or something. But, I'm just really happy to see that there are so many ways in which you see consent sort of panning out in the life of a child that doesn't necessarily only pertain to sex. So that tells them that their yes and their no have value. And this also then gives you the opportunity to start the conversation with children. Yes, I don't hug or kiss you without asking you, but do you do the same when you play with your friends? With especially older children who are likely to be active on social media, have they checked with their friends whether all of them are okay with their picture being shared? That's a very common thing these days. So do we think about consent in these aspects too? So this is one of the biggest ways in which we can walk the talk, and to also tell them that this comes two ways. I respect you, but that also means you have a responsibility. So it tells them that they have the right to say yes and no, but they have to give the same right to other people, especially peers and younger siblings, other friends in their class, and so on. So all right, now we are kind of
Yeah,
running out of
lots of
time.
questions are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I, of course, have one, and I'd like to kick it off. I think the biggest question, what happens for parents that have younger kids? When you're asked the question, where do babies come from? How should you deal with that?
Ramya, do you want to
It,
take that one?
yeah. So, Sukriti, yeah, this is a very common question. So it depends on which age the child is also asking. So one thing we also need to keep in mind is to be as close to the accurate information. Like for instance, what I mean is to it's best not to tell the baby that the baby comes from the sky, God drops the baby, or some people also have a way of saying like we got you from the garbage, things like that. It's best not to say these kind of things, and instead we could, for a starting, at a very young age, one could say from a tummy, the baby comes from the tummy, or from a very special place. I mean, there could also be babies who are, children who are adopted. So we need to also try and see whether we are talking to an adopted child. I mean, what are we trying to say? So baby comes from a tummy, and there is a particular seed that there is there, and which grows and then becomes big and comes out. This could be a very simple way where what we are trying to say is that not trying to give a very wrong information, right? Instead of like baby dropping from the sky, this is a far better explanation. And then gradually, as and when the child, of course, grows and has a better understanding, we would then talk about exactly in many ways of how sometimes we need to also talk in a very matter of fact, like matter of fact information of how sex happens is something, because if we start involving ourselves as personally, or this is what I do with my partner, that probably is going to be extremely uneasy for the child to listen to initially. Yeah. So, as a very matter of fact, we could explain on how the conception happens and how babies are born, things like that. So it's a more age and stage appropriate kind of information as to what age and stage the child is in, and understanding that and being able to answer accordingly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at one point, children may be happy with just knowing that they came from somebody's tummy. And at another point, it could be, okay, but how did I get there in the first place? So, you slowly add layers of information and get to a point where the child is a little more comfortable, or you think the child has enough understanding to be able to talk about sex. They probably won't get to the sex question itself until like much later. And by that time, they probably don't want the information from parents.
We'll take the next question from Parul. Parul Sharma, please go ahead. Parul? Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you so much. So now I have a question. I am, we're from an army background. So what happens is that sometimes I want to give my girls, especially my elder one who's growing and who's extremely curious, some information, but, and she's just 7. So sometimes she's talking, there are all kinds of people in the school, if, you have a defense background, that you would know. And sometimes the boys her age don't really process that information the same way as she does. So she may be sensible about it, but if I tell her about these, the names of the organs, and what if she, shares it with another classmate, and how will he take it? And then, maybe shame my child, because that has happened in the past. That sometimes our children know certain information, but the others around them are not, so I wouldn't say evolved, but are probably not mature enough to know how to process that information. Then my child is the one who's singled out, and they feel that she's fast. And they're just 7, but trust me, I teach in the same school, so I see them. And, so they label those girls as, okay, she knows too much, so maybe, what I'm trying to say. And this starts very early these days. Since I'm working in the school, I see it. So my thing is that, even if I tell my child the right thing, the kind of environment I'm in, and I'm in a tier 2 city, I live in Jaisalmer, and so it's not like a typical big city. And there are we have all kinds of people. So
Parul, I think it's the same here.
Yeah,
it's same in the big cities. I don't think it's any different here.
So I think
I just want to know that, yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Parul, and that's very common. Ramya, you want to?
I mean, like, it's so when people are from different pages, like especially children are not well informed in the manner that your child is. I do understand where you're coming from. Of course, ideally speaking, we would want the school also to take up these conversations, like to all their children there. Right, that would be the situation. Like Vani was saying, that who would be responsible in the family, apart from if you see if the school is also giving a sexuality education program to their children, what happens is that everybody then are able to be in the same place and understand why this particular person is saying, and probably will not shame there. So it's a valid concern, but that doesn't mean that you start not working on the child, just because. And also probably telling the child that this is not probably the information that they have had, the other children who are making fun of her has probably had. So probably maybe don't bring it up in front of them if that is going to make you in a position. So for the child also to balance and know where to say what, but withholding information for that purpose is not doing the child good also. Yeah, so you could always bring up these issues to the school authority and say that, this is something that we all need to know, and so the school can take an initiative to have a program for everybody.
I agree.
Sunita, Sunita had a question. Go ahead, Sunita.
Only 1 second. Hi, good evening. So I actually have 2 boys. They are 6 and 8. Yeah. Of course, my 8-year-old is about 8.5 and they're 6.5 actually. So what tends to happen is the boys are always together, and every of their activity is always together. So the 8.5-year-old has reached a certain maturity level and he has these certain questions, but then they're together, and when they ask me questions also they're together. So when I give an explanation, I do give it appropriate for the 8.5-year-old child. But then I've started to begin if my 6.5-year-old is getting information a bit too early for his age. So I'm trying to figure out what is the right content for the right age. Like, what defines it? Is there guidance around it, guidelines, or do you just go with your child's maturity? And because my older one and the younger one are always together, they are almost at par.
That's right. And thanks, Sunita. That is quite a common concern, especially when there are children who don't have too much of an age gap between them, that you're able to sort of separate them and have the conversation. Which is why at some point, if you notice, we use the phrase age and stage appropriate, because it shows that you cannot so strictly define categories of what what works at age 6 and what works at age 7. Like the question that Parul asked was all about children who are aged 7. But what worked with one child didn't really work with another. So you can't even say that all 7-year-olds are at the same stage. In cases such as what you described, it's very likely that they are, sort of sharing the same information, growing up with the same influences. So what you say to the 8-year-old, the 6-year-old will process whatever he can. The 8-year-old will probably get a little bit more, but at the same time, see, you are giving them accurate information. There's an example one of my colleagues uses, which I really like. It's like, okay, a 3-year-old asks, Acha, what is that? What is the moon? You can tell them it's like, a cardboard stuck on the sky or whatever, or you can simply tell them it's something called a satellite. It goes around the earth. So the 3-year-old is probably not going to understand that. But when they turn 6 or 7 and they learn such things as, planets and all of that, they will learn that. They'll be like, oh yeah, my mother told me when I was 3. So the 6-year-old will process what he can. The 8-year-old will get it. The 6-year-old is getting accurate information anyway. So I think that should work out okay. Like there's nothing at least to be very massively worried about as to whether they're getting the information too soon.
We'll take the next question from Parul. Parul Sharma, could please go ahead. Or I think, did you, Parul, you've already asked your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Seen Sukriti here in the chat, I think, saying that how to deal with a situation wherein when parents catches their child watching porn. Yeah. So the very term that catching the child almost makes like the child has done something wrong. So obviously pornography is not seen in the good light by most parents for very valid reasons, obviously. But the irony is that most times the child gets information about sexuality through pornography, to internet actually, right? Because parents have not spoken about it, or school has not given a proper sexuality education. So where do they go? I mean, they are curious, they want to know. So internet is probably the place that many children get their first-hand information about sexuality. And then we know what that kind of information could be. It might not be accurate. It might, like especially porn and things will have a lot of sexist messages. So what here the worry for the parents mostly could be is to understand, yes, that my child is seeking for an information, and now how do I fill in that information? Instead of becoming angry at the very act of the child watching pornography. Because the very moment if we are going to tell them what you're doing is completely bad, it's dirty, then we are attaching a lot of shame to the very idea to the child, and the child is going to shut down. So to make the child understand, yes, I do know that you're watching porn. It's not going to be easy, but these are ways that we need to prepare ourselves to tell the child that, yeah, porn is something that you have looked for, but then that is not the best place for you to find information, and then direct the child for more appropriate information that the child would want. Of course, it's also used, porn is also used for pleasure. I mean, it's not like it's only used for information. It's also something which is used for a pleasurable activity. And I think we kind of respect that while children are growing up, they would have their own desires and all. So we probably could say what are the kind of messages that you are getting, and try and talk about it rather than completely telling the child not to watch at all. You know, that
Yeah, so
probably
and
is
I
not
think
going.
Ani has also shared some excellent resources where we can go to. But we are running out of time, so I'm going to take the last question from Achia Pava. Please go ahead
Uh,
and ask your
Good
question.
evening, everyone. Mom is Achla, and I have two questions. I'm not a parent, but I work with children and adolescents. So one question is that many times there are situations where, since I work with children, so they say that they saw their parents into the act, and especially it is very rampant. As I was working with children on GB Road. GB Road, I'm sure everybody is aware about it. So the children complain about that they saw it, and sometimes the experience becomes traumatic for the child. So how can I deal with that? And second is also that I work with children with special needs. So to explain them about sexuality, it becomes a kind of challenge. So a little about both of these issues, if you can take.
Okay, thanks, Achla. I think I'll go with your question on the special children with disabilities first. The basic things that we talked about definitely still stand for parents. There is nothing that needs to change. Now, in a lot of countries, especially in India, there is a big notion that people with disabilities are like sexless people, that they don't have any sexuality, or that they are oversexed, which means they're just like, you know, all over the place. Both of these are myths. People with disabilities and therefore children with disabilities also have sexuality, which means that the basics that we talked about today with regard to, talking to them about their genitals, etc., still stand. What will vary, and that too depending on the disability, specific disability, is the way you are able to communicate with them. If it's a child with visual impairment, you will need some tactile materials to talk them through, say, certain things, as opposed to a child with a hearing impairment or a child with an intellectual disability. So the tools are going to be different, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to give something that's going to work across the board. But the basics of talking about sexuality, we would emphasize, still stand. So with regard to your other question, I mean, that is also far too nuanced for us to answer. There is certain level of counseling that might need, especially if the children feel they that they feel traumatized or something. But that is going to require some specialized intervention, especially with people who work with sex workers. So for those on the webinar who are not familiar with GB Road, it is an area which has a lot of, like, where sex work takes place. So that's going to require people, I think, those who work with sex workers and children of sex workers will be able to give like very specific pointers
But
there.
I'll ask a more
But
generic question. What happens when your child sees intimate acts that are at home? I mean, I think sex workers is probably the next level, but I think it's a very common. They'll see parents kissing, or they'll see ex, or a lot of people are living in very cloistered homes.
yeah.
So kids may be aware of certain things that are happening that possibly may be advanced for their age. How do you deal with that?
I think, I mean, the whole looking for opportunities thing that Ramya was talking about, that problem's been solved here, like it or not. So it's a good point to say that, this is something that two people in this case do with consent. It is something that is better done when they're much older. It is something that we do to, if it's the case of parents. I mean, it's very complicated to go into why people have sex, but to just tell them that this is something that adults, older people should do with consent and with safety. So this is all we can tell you now, depending on the age of the child, and weave more conversations in as they grow older. Ramya, anything you want to add?
No, I think that was
Thank
fantastic. I know we have a lot of questions coming in, and I think that it was great that Vani has also given quite a lot of resources because we've not been able to delve into all the questions. I think the one big takeaway for me from this session, and I think for most of us, is that we have to kind of embed these conversations into our daily life, make it kind of routine, make it open, make ourselves comfortable. So first we have to be comfortable and non-judgmental, is that's the biggest takeaway that I'm getting. And if we introduce this more on a daily basis, it won't be that, oh my god, I need to have that birds and the bees talk. It is kind of part of your daily routine where you're kind of helping your child understand, just like we do their brain, their other parts of their body, that we are helping them also understand their sexuality. With that, I'd like you guys to just give one closing tip, and then we would love to sign off for the evening.
Ramya, you want to
I
go?
would say have fun while you're talking to. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's don't make it like a big deal, and make it easy going. Uh, Also have fun while we are talking about it.
Yeah.
And
True. My tip would be, it doesn't need to be a conversation every time. Like some things that we've had other parents say is, they leave a book that is appropriate for the child to read about these topics. They just like gift it to them, or they just leave it lying around, or they give them certain links. We've shared a few, and a lot of these links can be directly shared with the children as well. So after parents go through the links, they send the child saying, okay, you had this question, I found something that might answer it, so here you go. So it doesn't even, like, a mix of methods is also going to make it light and fun, like what Ramya was saying.
Well, thank you all, and
That's right.
thanks everyone for joining us at Sipping Thoughts. So we will be having the video. It will be available on both the pages of Tarshi and of Sipping Thoughts, so you can watch the video there. And if you have questions, please put them there. We will request Ramya and Vani to try to answer them so that we can get more details. With that, I wish you all a good night, and let's start talking about all of this.
Thanks so much, everyone. This was fantastic
thank you, everyone.
for being such an engaged audience. Thanks, Ramya. Thanks, Supriti.
Thank you.
Bye.